I planned a trip to New Orleans. All my friends went down to Florida, and I booked a hostel, and someone helped me book a flight, and there was no problem. Landed in New Orleans, got a taxi to the hostel, went inside. Guy checked me in, showed me to my room, and I asked him how do I get to Bourbon Street, where all the action goes. And
of course.
He says, you walk down the steps, you turn left, walk 4 blocks, find a tram, and there you go, 20 minutes you're in Bourbon. So I thought, that's easy. So I walked down the steps, and I just panicked. I just suddenly dawned on me, I'm in this foreign city, dangerous city, on my own, with no sights, no information. How on earth am I going to get around? And it just hit me. It just fear, I suppose, like I'd never experienced. Yeah. And I just, Tony, you're here. If you don't want to do this, go home. So I took some deep breaths, thought, this is a challenge. I turned left, walked up the street 4 blocks, found someone to show me the tram, went down to Bourbon Street, and I don't remember much of the rest of my trip in New Orleans.
We got one more conversation from the Extraordinary Travel Festival in Yerevan, Armenia, and I'm sure I'm not offending any of my other guests by saying that I saved the best for last. Because the guest today is not only inspiring to us all, especially for somebody who would say, oh, I can't go there alone because of this, that, or the other. He's also extremely funny, as we got to see when he took the stage with an interesting keynote.
Traveling is like sex. If you talk about it too much, you never do it.
My name is Palle Bo. Welcome to Yerevan, Armenia. This is the Radio Vagabond, episode 245.
Settle down, I'm not finished yet.
This is the Radio Vagabond.
We're in Yerevan, Armenia, and I am sitting in a comfy couch at a hostel in the center of Yerevan. Actually, it's called a Mid-City Hostel, and I'm sitting next to Tony Giles, Tony the Traveler, Tony the Backpacker, Tony the Tiger. Welcome, Tony, or I should say welcome to me.
Hi.
Hi.
Out of all the extreme travelers I met at the Extraordinary Travel Festival, my last guest in this mini-series with interviews from Armenia totally stands out. He's well-traveled, been to 128 countries when I met him in October, but that's not what makes him unique.
Yeah, so I'm Tony Giles. I'm 44 years old. I come from the UK and I live near Plymouth in the far southwest of England, and I happen to be totally blind and 80% deaf in both ears, and I spent the last 25 years or so traveling the world alone.
Yeah, let that sink in. Totally blind and 80% deaf on both ears. But that doesn't stop him from seeing the world. Most of the time he travels alone. He doesn't have a seeing eye dog or an aide to warn him when there's an obstacle or a hole in the pavement, or which local bus to get on, even in countries where most people don't speak English. The first time I heard of him, I thought of 2 questions. First of all, why? He can't possibly get anything out of it when he can't see the view.
Now, why would a blind person want to go and see the world? The answer? Why not?
Tony will get back to that later in the episode, and boy, was I wrong. He gets so much out of it. And my other question, that I'm sure also is on your mind right now. How is that even possible? Here's Tony again.
It's easy, very possible. I need to go back a bit. I didn't wake up one morning and think, let's go travel the world. I grew up in a small town. My mum knew I have an older brother and an older sister, and she could see I was just as intelligent as them. They have sight and full hearing, and she knew I needed to be educated in order to be accepted in the world. Because as a child it's okay, but as an adult, if you're not intelligent or can't communicate, you won't be accepted. So she sent me off to a boarding school when I was 10 for blind children, about 400 kilometres from my home. So I stayed there for 6 weeks, 8 weeks at a time, and I had specialist education, small classes, 8 to 10 children, so almost one-to-one teaching, and I learned in Braille the tactile dots that blind people use to read and write. And I also have mobility training, so that's learning to use a white cane to find objects on the ground and get about. And I had route training, so that's going from one place to another, like my classroom door to end of the school or to my dormitory room. And by the age of 11, 12, I was walking to the local shops and crossing roads, and I would use landmarks. I'd like hit my cane against lampposts or gates, and I would count the small streets I crossed so I could remember how to get back to my school or where I started. And by the age of 14, 15, I was crossing roads safely with the help of the public and catching buses and trains home. And then my travels really started when I was 16. I got the opportunity to go to America with my school, and everything was very different. People spoke differently, everything was bigger, the traffic went different direction, and that's when I started to realize I could travel.
Let's just go back to the years before boarding school, when you were a smaller kid. It was you were living on a one-way street, and
I was living in a cul-de-sac, so traffic went both ways, but it was a dead end. So I always knew that traffic would never come behind me, so it was quite easy. And I played in the street, kicked a football around, rode a big three-wheel bike, and my.
I bet you crashed a few times.
Yeah, a few times, many. I broke the bike several times, fell over the wall. But all my friends, they knew I was blind, but they just accepted me. I was their neighbour. They didn't treat me any different. We were rough and that, I fell over, I cried, I got up and got on with it, and they didn't give me any extra, Yeah, but if I was in danger, they would rescue me. But apart from that, we got on with it.
And I heard you talk about this in your TEDx talk that's on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the episode notes for that. It seems like you had parents. Let me put it another way. Some parents who have a special needs child would maybe be extra careful and not let it go out and play on the streets without supervision and stuff like that. But it seems like your parents, they just said, oh, you're a kid like any other, go and do what you do. You might get some bruises here and there. And I thought when I heard that may be something that prepared you for the life you ended up living.
Yeah, I mean, they always had an eye on us. They always watched us.
They did that on me too.
Yeah. They made sure we wouldn't get into trouble or, stealing cars or whatever. But yeah, they let us get on with it. And, especially my mum. My dad was a bit more cautious, but he was an older gentleman, so he sort of grew up in a different era where children were put into homes, so he worried more. But he had to let me get on with it, and then especially when I went to boarding school, because there, even though we had traffic, it was a big campus, playing fields, and you could run around safely, and you knew for the most part you wouldn't be getting run over or anything. So by the time I was 15, 16, I had all this confidence. My teachers would tell me I would do things, and my mum supported me, and off I went. And then, of course, when I went to the States, it was, like another world.
Yeah. Was it the trip to the States that sparked your travel bug, or did that come later?
The States was the start of it, really. I mean, by then I was sort of travelling home and starting to go to rock concerts anyway. But going to the States and a different culture. I mean, they speak English, but a different way of doing things and speaking. People walked up to me in the States and said, "Are you blind?" And people in England would never say that. There's too much shyness. And eating different food, hearing, and I thought, oh, this is exciting. I want more of this. And I know we went to Boston, so not the most exciting place in America, but for me, it was an eye-opener.
Yeah. Yes, see, that's an example of you. Yeah. You crack so many jokes. And the other night we were in a bar, a very noisy and very, very crowded bar. Yeah. And you said, "Can you please tell me where the bathroom is?" And we walked there, and then we skipped the line. When they saw me walking with you, they said, "Oh, go ahead." And we skipped the line. And when we got to the door of the bathroom, first in line, I whispered, "We skipped the line," and you said, "I didn't see that."
Yeah, that's the way I was brought up. We joked. They treated me normally. They didn't. You're not going to change the language just because you don't see.
No.
That would be stupid. Because when I'm an adult, everyone else will say those words, and then they apologise. But that's it's life.
So you like that the Americans were more just out there and speaking to you?
Yeah, I liked that then. I was very young and naive, but I found that appealing at the time. Later I found it over the top, but yeah, at the time, a week.
An American over the top, really?
Yeah, when you're there for 4 months. I studied there. I spent 4 months in South Carolina studying American history and culture. Well, not culture, but history.
Yeah. So then, after America, what then?
So after the States, I went back with a friend when I was 20, and we did New York, DC, the usual stuff, Philadelphia. And then I decided I'd do an American Studies degree. I wanted to do British history, but unfortunately it was all going to be kings and queens, and I was more interested in economic and social, going down caves and iron bridges and stuff.
Yeah.
So we went to one of these sort of university fairs, and they got the stalls and they try and flog you a course, and someone said, hey, American Studies. I thought, oh, what the hell's that? And they said, you get to spend 5 months in the States. I said, sign me up. So yeah, I went over. I started in 98. I went to a city called Northampton in the southeast of England, one of the roughest towns in England at the time. Lots of drinking and partying, of meeting people. And it was great at uni because when I was at boarding school, the education was fantastic, but the social skills weren't there. They didn't really teach you about sex and about drinking and about how to communicate with the opposite sex and stuff. So I made quite a few mistakes, as you can imagine. I'd be scratching something in public and not realise it, or say the wrong thing to a girl, or touch the... And so I kind of learned the hard way. But when I got to university, it was a normal university, so 99% of the students there were non-disabled. So I'd be sitting at a bar in the uni, and someone going, we just start talking. And by the time they'd seen I was blind, it was too late. We'd become friends or what. So it broke the ice immediately.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I was treated as a normal person,
Yeah.
So there was no excuses, and it was the real world. It was an introduction into the real world. And then, like I say, I went out to the States, and I talked about in my talk at the conference, I talk about going to New Orleans and suddenly realising I'm in a foreign city I'd never been to, and I'm totally blind and partially deaf. And even though I've been travelling around the UK for 5 years, I just panicked. I can't do this, and I don't know how I'm going to get around. And then,
can you describe what happened?
So I planned a trip to New Orleans. All my friends went down to Florida, and I booked a hostel, and someone helped me book a flight, and there was no problem. Landed in New Orleans, got a taxi to the hostel, went inside. Guy checked me and showed me to a roomy room, and I asked him, how do I get to Bourbon Street, where all the action goes? And
of course.
He says, you walk down the steps, you turn left, walk 4 blocks, find a tram, and there you go, 20 minutes you're in Bourbon. So I thought, that's easy. So I walked down the steps and got outside, and it was very hot. It was about 30, 35 degrees Celsius and 98% humidity, and I just panicked. I just suddenly dawned on me, I'm in this foreign city, dangerous city, on my own, with no sights, no information. How on earth am I going to get around? And it just hit me. It just fear, I suppose, like I'd never experienced. And I just, well, Tony, you're here. If you don't want to do this, go home. So I took some deep breaths, thought, this is a challenge. I turned left, walked up the street 4 blocks, found someone to show me the tram, went down to Bourbon Street, and I don't remember much of the rest of my trip in New Orleans.
I'm more concerned, how did you manage to get back home after Bourbon Street?
Taxi.
Okay.
Drunk. That was the easy part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a great experience, and then I met people in the bars and the jazz clubs and the eatery halls, and people just bought me beer and helped me read the menu, and I just talk to people. I just do what I do. I talk to people. Because I've been doing that all my life. When I'm at school, I can't read the whiteboard or blackboard. And of course, the teachers would talk. They would say what they were writing on the blackboard. So I've always been asking questions from the age of 10 because I've had to. So me, it was a natural progression into travel. And I started slowly. Then I went to Australia and New Zealand when I finished my degree. And they were countries that spoke English. And I knew the infrastructure. I mean, walking around New York City is probably the easiest city for a blind person, at least downtown Manhattan, because it's on a grid system. So you're just walking in straight lines, and then you ask someone, am I on 55th Street East or 46th Street West? And the same when you get on the Underground or the subway. You just listen to the announcements and you're either going uptown or downtown. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was easy. And the same in Melbourne, which the centre's more or less on a grid system. And again, I could speak to people in English. And then when I built up my confidence, this was 2001-2, when I built up all this confidence, I thought I can do it. let's go somewhere different. So I went to Thailand and Vietnam, and that was completely different.
Yeah, because in Thailand, I've spent quite a lot of time in Chiang Mai, and they do have sidewalks. Yeah. But that's where they park the cars, or they have the newsstands, or you have to walk onto the street. How did you manage that?
I was in Bangkok, and I'd walk say 30 meters, and there'd be a hole, or the pavement was broken.
Yeah.
So I had to go into the street, literally, and there were cars and tuk-tuks going around me, and people going, and all their language. So it was people grabbing me and walking me around things and asking, and then I knew how to get to the hostel, and then once there, because I was in the capital, fortunately it was an international hostel, I met fellow travellers and said, "Hey mate, how are you? Where are you going today?" "Oh, I'm going to this temple. Can I tag along?" "Yeah, okay." So I got to do these things as well. "That's fine, I'll come." Mm-hmm. So I went to an embassy one day and waited in line while this guy got his visa. That took an hour. And then we went and visited 2 temples. So it was a combination of, them helping me and me sort of waiting, and then I would give them an idea of how I see the world, how I saw the temple, through my hands and my feet and smells of the incense and touching. I remember we went to a temple one day and touched a reclining Buddha, and I'm feeling all of his body and his facial, and the Dutch guy I met is describing it to me, and then. And then we went out into the garden and he said, "Tony, someone's getting a massage. You want a massage?" "Oh, that sounds good." So we walked over, and then the really fun was we were in Bangkok, we were on the river, and, the boat goes along and you have to jump on and jump off. And they stopped it for me. I waved me white, and they stopped the boat for me.
Oh, cool.
That was fantastic. And people were lovely.
Yeah.
And then I did a tour, because back then I wasn't as brave to get to places as I would do now, so I booked a tour to go up to the bridge on the River Kwai, because I'd read the audiobook and I'd listened to the film, so I know about World War II, and that's what I was interested in. So I did a day trip to the River Kwai, and I got to touch an elephant and ride on one of the old steam chains. So that was good. I went in the museum with one of the other people on the tours and walked around the cemetery. And the amazing thing was, we come out of this cemetery and we're in the middle of, she said, "Come and look at this." And there was a tactile model of the whole map of the river, the bridge, the cemetery, and it was all tactile, and I could feel it. And that was incredible.
Awesome. Yeah.
In a third world country or developing country. So
yeah.
The ultimate destination for armchair travelers who are looking for inspiration to get out into the real world and let loose their wanderlust. This is the Radio Vagabond. Gotta keep moving.
I said it in the beginning that 2 questions come to mind, is, and you sort of touched on the other one. The first one is, how is that even possible? And the second one is, what do you get out of it? Because I was on your website and I saw there was a video of you doing a cable car with a beautiful view. And yeah, you can feel you're in a cable car, but you can't see the view. So what's in it for you?
For me, well, the whole essence of traveling is combinations. When I started, it was about escapism, but it was about getting from one place to another as independently as possible, with little help as possible, apart from fellow travelers I met and the local people on the street. And it was about having fun at the beginning. And as I continued in my travels and matured, it's now about meeting people and learning about the culture. So I couch surf today. Spent the last 10 years couch surfing, and I can use my computer with a speech software to find hosts, and I go and say it with them. And so I'm not staying in a hotel and seeing 4 walls. No. I'm meeting local people and eating their food, and I'm finding out how they cope when they don't have running water or they don't have electricity 24 hours a day, like we just assume in the UK. And like you say, I go on a cable car because I can feel it moving. I know if it's going up and down or going down, or if it's going fast or slowly. And I use all my body when I'm walking in the streets. Say in Bangladesh or in the Gambia, I can feel the dusty streets in my feet and the soil or the mud, and smell the the soil or hear the music or smell onions and spices cooking and just talk to people, just go and sometimes it might be using Google Translate or using an intermediary to help communicate. When I went to Japan with my girlfriend, we went into a restaurant and the waiter came up, no English, so she brought a phone and she called her boss who could speak some English. We said, we'd like noodles and this, and I think it was something else, and she told the waitress and she brought it, and then at the end I pulled out my wallet and she rang her boss again, and her boss told us how much, and we paid our Japanese money and we said goodbye and left. And that's how you can do it all over the world.
Yeah.
It's about connecting and meeting people and sharing and giving and taking. And people ask me, why do you want to come to my country? I mean, you can't see, they can't believe it. They ask me, well, where's your parents or where's your friends? I say, I travel alone. And I say, I want to come and talk to you and learn about your culture. And I don't need to see to talk to someone. So that's what it's about now.
Yeah.
And it's also about showing other people that they can also travel or live their dreams. It doesn't matter if they're blind or deaf or in a wheelchair or emotional issue or whatever.
No.
And it's really surprising. It's actually the people who can see it come up to me and say, thank you, you really helped me, you really inspired me. And at first that was surprising because I thought, well, there's nothing wrong with you, go and do it. But
yeah. That's something that I overheard so many people say to you this week, that, you're such an inspiration, and if you can do it, anybody can.
Exactly.
So we heard Tony talk about what he gets out of travel, which aligns very well with the rest of us, meeting the locals, learning about their way of living, and the sounds and smells of a place. Everything except the one thing of being able to see a place. But Tony has a special gift. He's able to sense a room without being able to see it. And when we come back, I'll put that to the test when I ask him to describe the room we're in. A room he's never seen. That's in a minute when the program continues. Stay with us.
You can follow Palabo on his Facebook page. Join the conversation about traveling and being a digital nomad. You can also see pictures, videos, and stories that don't necessarily make it into the podcast. Simply search for The Radio Vagabond.
Life is short. There is so much to explore. I won't let a second go to waste.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. Hotels25.com searches a bunch of the biggest hotel sites in one simple search. That would get you the best price. Hotels25.com.
This is the Radio Vagabond.
And now, let's get back to the show.
When I left you, I mentioned that Tony Giles is 100% blind, but able to sense a room.
So I was born spatially aware. I don't really know how or why, but I was just born with it. I suppose rolling around the street on a three-wheel bike and being able to sense the spaces between the wall and the lamppost on the pavement. So when I walk into a room, I can feel the space, I can feel the energy, I suppose, and the echo and the squeeze of air. So I can walk into a room and I can say, it's maybe 5 meters wide by 10 meters long.
Tell me about this space, the place we are right now.
So we're in the kind of hostel lounge, I guess you'd say it is. There's a couple of couches, I think, and an armchair. We had the little kind of coffee table in front of us. And I would say it's a bit difficult with the echo. It's probably bigger in its sound, but it's probably about...
How high is the ceiling?
Are you talking meters? 4 meters high, maybe?
Yeah, it is.
Give or take.
It's especially high right here.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. There's a couch over in the left corner. There's a leather couch, a group with a table as well, and a couple of armchairs, and there's a small coffee table.
So we're sort of in a space within a space. Where we're sat is probably quite a rectangle. Probably 2 meters by 2 by 3 or something like that. And then the room itself gets a bit bigger. It's probably 5 or 6 meters long, and I'm not sure about the width. The width could be 4.
See, There's
possibly more. I'm not sure about the width.
What happens with the width? You're absolutely right about everything you said. With the width, the wall goes and then it turns, and there's a little corner over there with a little extra space. So I wouldn't even be able to tell you.
I've been on this left side all the time where we're sat, as the doors on our right.
Yeah.
I've not been on the right side at all, so I'm guessing to some extent. The echo is troubling because it can distort.
Yeah.
Rooms with carpets are better. I walk into a church like I did earlier.
Yeah, we got kind of a hard floor as well.
Yes.
It's not perfect for an interview, but we get by.
What's the floor made of? It's not marble.
No, but it looks like marble. It's kind of fake marble.
Very smooth, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then. Yeah.
Tony has written and published 3 ebooks about his adventures. They're called Seeing the World My Way, Seeing the Americas My Way, and Seeing a Slice of Southern Africa My Way. You can order these books on Tony's website, tonythetraveler.com. Traveler with 2 L's.
Now, Tony, we talked a little bit about Thailand being more difficult than walking the streets in New York, and because of the way they do things there. But I've even been to countries where it's been more difficult. I was in Uganda, where you were lucky if there was a pavement, and there were normally very big holes. And there was a Danish friend of mine who's also 100% blind, who was there. Happened to visit his Ugandan girlfriend at the time, and he told me that walking the streets in Kampala was a lot more difficult than Copenhagen.
Yes.
What are some of the most difficult places you've been walking?
Papua New Guinea is probably the most challenging country to been to, because there's no roads and there's no public transport. I went from my first place was a small town about half an hour across the border from Indonesia, and I was able to get a lift from the border to the town. Now, we couldn't find my couch surfer, so it took me to a nunnery for the night. Yeah. But it was all I could do was use public transport to get around the town. But to get to my next destination, and most people, you think you'd get on a bus and you'd drive, whatever, an hour, 2 hours. My next destination was 3 hours in a dugout canoe, bailing out water, along with 20 other people.
Wow.
And
I take it they didn't speak much English?
One guy spoke some, but not too much. And that was the second destination. The third destination was going through the jungle at night in a 4x4, and we still got stuck.
Yeah.
And that was in a 4x4. We were meant to get there at midnight. We got there at 3 a.m. Oh my God. And I was with a priest, as well as the driver. So, but that's part of the fun for me. People might find that scary and worrying. What, do you get kidnapped, or to me, I don't worry about the danger, probably because I don't see it, and I've had such a safe upbringing. I never really worry about it. The only time I've sort of been slightly concerned was first time in Johannesburg, and I didn't think I'd get robbed or be beaten up, but just possibly get caught in a crossfire with the different feuds that were going on. And in my first time in Caracas, I was aware that was a dangerous city.
Yeah.
I was with people all the time, but I was aware. I was intelligent enough to know that things definitely could happen in Caracas at that time. But apart from that, nowhere else at all, really.
No, but I've been thinking, do you think that you are more vulnerable as a traveler, or actually in some sense more safe because
both?
Because you look different when you walk with a cane, and maybe I rob people, but I'm not going to rob the blind guy. But how do you see that?
Both. So yes, in theory, I'm more vulnerable. I'm totally blind and I'm severely deaf. Although 1-to-1 I'm good, but I'm not going to hear someone walking up behind me till they get very close. And certainly in crowded situations, I could be easily robbed or knifed. It's never happened. Outside the UK, I had to get people to help me use a cash machine and trust that they won't take the money or take the card. That's never happened. But in some ways, people want to look after me and take me home. But I have been robbed on buses in Africa. And I don't get upset. I understand it because they might be in a situation when they're trying to field their family. So they might take my camera or take my audio digital, and it's annoying. But I look at it that, well, maybe they'll sell that and feed their family, feed their children. Yeah. So you can't judge them too harshly because you don't know. In America, yes, you'd be more upset, or in Australia or somewhere like that, yes, you'd be more annoyed, pissed off. In Italy, I had a camera stolen, and that was very, So you sort of try and look at the situation and try and be more and more open-minded, which travelling has allowed me to become, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's just life.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been killed or knifed or robbed, and I met sighted people, who've been raped. I've met girls, unfortunately, who've been sexually assaulted, and that's never happened to me. So I consider myself very lucky and very fortunate.
Tony, you're so well-traveled. I'm 12, 13 years older than you, and you've been to 12, 13 more countries than me.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Exactly. It's not a competition.
No.
It's just I'm doing it because I love it. And I didn't start off going, let's go do 193. I didn't even know there were that many when I started. I was just doing it for, like I say, escapism and fun. And then 2008, I had a successful kidney transplant. I was diagnosed with kidney failure in my early 20s, and when I was in the hospital in Christmas, this is 2008, I thought, get over this, no problem. Let's travel the world. Let's see if we can reach 193 and go beyond, and see what happens. And if I do it, I do it. If I don't, I don't. But it's a nice goal to have.
Yeah, and that's the same for me. It's a goal, but and I sometimes I joke and say if I still need to go to 10 more when I'm 95, I can still say it's still my goal.
Exactly.
And then I die, and sorry I didn't make it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's something because obviously these few days we've been surrounded with so many people who count countries, and people who don't count countries think that it's just that, a competition, and who gets there first, and just go into have a burger and then leave the country again. But we want to see and experience a place.
You want to immerse yourself in the culture and the history and the lifestyle, and discover how they live and deal with their problems, their issues, and you can learn from them. Mm-hmm. We're not the geniuses just because we live in modernized countries, and in fact we're in many cases we're more inferior than the people that live in the so-called third world countries or developing. They have far more knowledge because they live simpler lives, easier lives, probably happier lives in many. Certainly in the villages, I've noticed that. They don't want anything.
Yeah.
Just to be left alone. So it's not a race. I mean,
no,
I don't think so. It's not because it's silly because you'll never catch the tail.
No. So what's coming next for you?
I got another week in Armenia, beautiful Armenia, and tomorrow I'm going on another guided tour to see a couple of museums and experience a monastery, and then I go north to the second city called Gyumri, and then I go to Diligent, and then fly home on the 21st of whatever month we're in, October. Home for a couple of weeks.
And your girlfriend?
Yeah, she comes over, Tatiana.
Oh.
She's Greek, and she's also blind. She only went blind when she was 16 from a glaucoma eye problem. Mm-hmm. So she could see in shapes and stuff before. So she'll come over a couple of weeks, hopefully, and we'll just chill in England and maybe go to a couple of places we've not visited before and maybe see some friends. And then she goes back to work. She works in a call centre in a hospital. And I go to Sao Tome and Principe.
Oh, I was there 2 months ago.
How was that?
It was great. I'm really bummed that I didn't make it up to Principe because that should be amazing. I was only in Sao Tome and in the center of the world and got to see that.
How come you didn't get to Principe?
Lack of time, and I did the Ghana, Togo, Benin, and then back to Togo, back to Ghana, and got to see a lot of those three countries. And then it was just a spur of the moment decision at the end, saying let's see if we can get to Sao Tome and then back to Ghana before the flight that was already booked.
Did you get to the chocolate factory or chocolate house? in Tommy. There's a place that makes chocolate. The guy makes chocolate. Yeah, I read about that online. Oh yeah, that's one of the things to do. Oh well, the next time.
But I was traveling with a good friend of mine, Cynthia, and we rented a car and drove around. And in the northern part of the island, the roads are fantastic.
Are they?
And then we get to then they gradually get worse and worse and worse. Yes. And we booked a place really on the south of the island, and the last bit of road. In this, we did rent a 4x4, okay. But when I saw that, I thought, "Oh my God, how are we even going to get up there?" It was almost like when I tried to drive Sunny Pass up to Lesotho in a Toyota Corolla, which is like running a marathon in flip flops.
That's a good phrase. Brilliant.
But we get so many great experiences as travelers, and you partially fund your travels by giving public speaking?
Yeah, it's a combination of giving public speaking. I got 3 ebooks which I published. First book was in print, 2010, about why a blind guy would go and see the world. And I describe it as by smells and sounds and touch and meeting people. And then
it was Seeing the World My Way.
Yeah, that was Seeing the World My Way. And then they didn't want to. It was in print for 5 years. They didn't want to republish it, so I decided to self-publish as ebooks. And then I got Seeing the Americas My Way, and my latest one, Seeing a Slice of Southern Africa My Way, and they're all available on the usual ebook websites. And so I do that. So I try and sell them. Public speaking. I also got to make a couple of documentaries. One in 2016 or 17 in Israel and Bethlehem, and one in 2019 in Ethiopia with the BBC travel show. Oh, cool. And that was a great experience. So I do that, and then I give talks. I was in Australia the beginning of September for a conference for blind travellers, visually impaired travellers, and I got my flights and hotels paid for. So sometimes they pay me with cash, sometimes it'll be accommodation. That's how I do it. And then my father left me a pension when I was 16. Okay. So he sadly passed away. So I live on that, pay my rent. Yeah, and I travel cheaply. I use couch surfing, like I say. I stay in hostels. I'm paying €15 a night in this hostel. So yeah. And I'm very lucky being blind. People will buy me drinks. People will buy me food, whatever. Not because I feel sorry for me, just because they appreciate what I'm doing, really. And you got to pay it. Yeah, don't worry about it. And then you'll buy them back. So it's give and take.
So this finishing up just about the Extraordinary Travel Festival. What's your thoughts on this festival?
I think this festival was fantastic. I was a little worried at first because I'm not really good in groups with my deafness, and obviously I'm not going to lip read. So I was a bit worried there'd be too many people and too noisy, and maybe people wouldn't have time to sort of sit and talk with me. But no, it works out the other way. It was overwhelmingly good, overwhelmingly positive, and there was some really great talks, really interesting observations, and just I've learned some things myself about the way different people travel. So yeah, it's been good, and I've made a lot of connections, and I think I've made a couple of friends. Yeah. The one sat here. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one in 2 years. Yeah.
And this morning we got a message from Rick Kazarian saying that there's not going to be one next year because it's just so much work. Yes. But he's really hoping that there's going to be one in 24, depending on how we answer the survey that he put out. So we have to say that you need to do one more because I want to do this again.
Absolutely.
Where do you think it should be?
That's a good question. Yeah, I heard some murmurings about one Bulgaria possibly. I'm not sure if that's right. There's certainly one in Thailand. I think that was definitely a choice.
I thought Moldova would be a great choice.
Moldova would be interesting. Yeah, it's not a place where that many people go. Yeah.
I think it should be a place where certainly not a Western European or a North American big city. Paris would be too easy, but somewhere a little bit off the grid, but not Mogadishu.
No, not Mogadishu. Oh, maybe Lesotho.
Yeah. Because when I did that, I never got to go because when I got to the border control, they'd never seen a Toyota Corolla up there. So they said to me, "What are you doing here in that vehicle? Yeah. You need to turn around because the road's just going to get worse." Yeah. So I got to the border, and I had to turn around. So I called the episode of my podcast the day that I never made it to Lesotho.
What a shame. It's a lovely little country.
Yeah.
Very poor, very peaceful.
Yeah, very high.
Yeah, very high. I spent 3 days on a pony.
Oh.
Not in succession, but that was amazing. I've been to the mountains.
I'm gonna lobby for Lesotho.
Big waterfall.
Yeah. Great idea, Tony.
That could be.
Thank you so much, and can't wait to see you again.
Pleasure. Yeah. Anyone wants to get hold of me, go to my website, TonyTheTraveler.com.
I will put all the links in the notes for this episode, and also where to get your books and where to book you as a speaker. All of that is going to be in the show notes and on the RadioVagabond.com.
Pleasure speaking with you.
Always.
That's almost it for this episode, and almost all for this year. Except we have a Flashback Friday from the Philippines and another raw and uncut Vagabond diary from Sydney on the last day of 2022. We start the new year with several episodes from my visit to Saudi Arabia and much more. I have so many plans for the Radio Vagabond in 2023, and I'm going to throw a lot more in your direction in the future. So make sure to click follow or subscribe or whatever it's called in your podcast app. I hope you can sense that I put a lot of work into producing this podcast, and I want to thank you so much for being with me on my journey. If you want to give me a Christmas present this year, it would be making a review in your app or sharing it with your friends. Simply just send a message to one of your friends who like to travel and tell them about the Radio Vagabond. Or share the player that I have for each episode on Facebook.com/The Radio Vagabond. My name is Palabo. Have a happy new year. See ya.
Radio Vagabond.
Produced by RadioGuru.co.uk.